Hey everybody, it's Barbara Ann. Welcome back to my channel, Straight Out of Context. This is Mackenzie Maison. Couple gets life for monstrous acts in death of Mackenzie Maison. 5. March 10th, 2016. The monstrous acts that led to the murder of Mackenzie Maison defied explanation or understanding, a St. Clair County Circuit judge said on Thursday. Judge Daniel Kelly said Mackenzie is the third case he has presided over in which a child's death was orchestrated by the parents and step-parents. What puzzles me is how, in a community so dedicated to combating child abuse and neglect, these conditions go undetected until it is too late, Kelly said. Those who saw and chose to do nothing are, in my mind, equally responsible for this crime. They must share the blame. Judge Kelly sentenced Andrew and Hilery Maison, Mackenzie's biological father and stepmother, to life in prison without parole for the murder of the 5-year-old Port Huron girl. Dressed in orange and wearing shackles, the Maisons sat quietly throughout the sentencing hearing. Hilery and Andrew Maison were found guilty January 29th of first-degree murder in Mackenzie's death and the first-degree child abuse and torture of Mackenzie and her 3-year-old sister who survived, Makayla Maison. Police were called to the Maisons Oak Street home May 26th for reports of an unresponsive child. Hilery Maison called 911, initially telling the dispatcher that Mackenzie hadn't eaten and later reporting that the 5-year-old wasn't breathing. Mackenzie was unresponsive when emergency paramedics arrived. She was taken to an area hospital where medical personnel attempted to resuscitate her for over 45 minutes. She was declared dead at the hospital, but testimony at trial indicated that Mackenzie may have been dead hours before Hilery Maison made the 911 call. Medical experts testified Mackenzie was malnourished, dehydrated, bruised, and had pneumonia. She weighed only 25 pounds at 5 years old, and her 3-year-old sister Makayla weighed only 17 pounds. She was also taken to a hospital for malnutrition and dehydration, and she fortunately survived. During trial, doctors testified that neither girl had been seen at a doctor for at least a year prior to Mackenzie's death, even as the very young girls were losing weight and follow-up visits were recommended. Defense witnesses testified that the girls were picky eaters and may have had an illness that contributed to their malnourishment. But in the 6 months following her sister's death, Makayla nearly doubled her weight and continues to grow and thrive fabulously. And I have confirmation on that by people that are in the family. She's now a teenager and she is beautiful and she is healthy. Her biological mother, Shelby Coffey, said Makayla is active and growing. She doesn't settle down. Still smiling, still bubbly, Coffey said after the sentencing. Coffey said Mackenzie would have been 6 on March 3rd. Even though Mackenzie was a strong soldier, she didn't make it. But Mackenzie is always Makayla's angel, Coffey said during the court hearing. She will always be a spiritual role model, not only for her little sisters, but for me, my family, and this community. Hilery Maison and her husband Andrew Maison declined to make a statement at sentencing. Senior Assistant Prosecutor Mona Armstrong said that the case was difficult for prosecution, law enforcement, and first responders. It did not happen overnight. It didn't happen in a period of a few weeks. This took months to get to the point that these children were in the grave state that they were in, Armstrong said. It is unfathomable how parents could not only allow that to happen, but to purposely cause that to happen. That is a specific, special kind of evil. Judge Kelly sentenced the Maisons to a mandatory term of life in prison without parole. He sentenced them to life in prison on each child abuse and torture charge, though the defense had asked for a term of years on those counts. All of the sentences will be served concurrently.
Judge, I've discussed the matter with my client. My understanding that Mr. Maison will not be making a statement.
Likewise, Mr. Maison will refrain from making any comments.
Anything to be stated by the prosecutor, or anything you would like to address the court?
Yes, Your Honor, and I know the court is in a unique position having heard the testimony and evidence in this case. I think it's evident the gravity of the behavior that brought this case before the court, ultimately causing Mackenzie's death and severe harm to Makayla. this case for all of us involved, from the prosecutor's office, law enforcement involved, but I know from the Fort Huron Police Department, was very difficult for the reason that it's incomprehensible how these defendants could have chosen to engage in this prolonged, purposeful malnourishment, starvation, maltreatment of these children to the extent that it ultimately caused this harm. This was not something, and I know this court knows, it did not happen overnight. It didn't happen in a period of a few weeks. This took months to get to the point that these children were in the grave state that they were in. And it's just by virtue of Mackenzie having gotten pneumonia first that she passed. And Makayla certainly was in a position on that day when police responded that she was likely going to die as a result of the condition that the defendants had put her in. And it's unfathomable how parents could not only allow that to happen, but to purposefully cause that to happen. That is a specific, special kind of evil, Your Honor. And that's something that I know, even if the statute didn't call for a natural life without the possibility of parole sentence, that is the right sentence for these offenses and for these defendants. So that is the sentence that I'm asking the court to impose on count 1. As it relates to the remaining counts, the recommendation is life. That is a somewhat complicated area under Michigan's statute, life for law. I'm asking the court to actually impose a term of years for the offenses of child abuse and torture. Guidelines, you don't have to follow guidelines given the first-degree murder offense, obviously, but guidelines, I think, do provide an appropriate range, topping out at 225 months. So I'm asking the court to impose that sentence for the offenses counts 2 through 5. And Your Honor, I would also note that Mackenzie and Makayla's mother is present and has asked for the opportunity to address the court.
Shelby Coffey, Coffee. I am Mackenzie and Makayla's biological mother. And bear with me, my emotions are a little bit hot right now. So I'm just going to read my paper.
Relax.
My girls never had the chance at the hands of these defendants. The defendants were supposed to raise them and give them a childhood. That childhood was taken from my girls, from Mackenzie and from Makayla. Makayla almost didn't get that chance. The defendants took it upon themselves to take care of 2 children in the home, but not 2 of the others. I am angry. Why just my children? I ask myself. I want the defendants to learn from their mistakes, from their choices. I want them to see what they did was wrong. Everyone has good in them, but evil had to have taken over. Mackenzie just missed her 6th birthday, March 3rd. She will miss out on going to school. She doesn't get to have an imagination. Imagine what she will be when she grows up. Her imagination was taken from her at the hands of these defendants. She doesn't get to be silly. She doesn't get to be a big sister, a role model to Makayla and my youngest, Melody. She doesn't get someone to love her and care for her like she should have every day. Makayla doesn't get to have that big sister to look up to. She has to take that role on herself as the big sister now. She will miss out on talking to her sisters about her frustrations when she gets mad at me, or even talking to her when she hits her teenage years about boys. She will miss the advice that her big sister would have been able to give her. She has to live every day knowing her sister wasn't sick just from pneumonia, but she has to live with the facts that that person she was supposed to count on and have that trust in took her sister's life away. She is labeled with this for the rest of her life. Her past will always haunt her. Even though Mackenzie was a strong soldier, she didn't make it. But Mackenzie is always Makayla's angel. She'll always be the spiritual role model, not only for her little sisters, but for me, my family, and this community. I want the community to stand up and say something if they see something wrong. Let this case be a lesson to everybody. If there's something you say, if you see something, say something before any more children's lives are lost.
Thanks very much. Appreciate what you've gone through. I have a perspective that not everyone has in a courtroom. When you're sitting on the bench, you look at the audience and you see their reaction to the evidence, and I'll never forget violently reacting to see the picture of Makayla that was put on the screen. How you had to run out of the courtroom. I saw you collapse in the hallway. I just can't imagine the pain that you went through. I'm so sorry for you.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to address the court? One would like to believe that tragedies such as this rarely occur. Unfortunately, this has not been my experience. Mackenzie Maison joins the names of two other child victims whose cases I presided over, Grace Galvin and Ariana Swenson. All three murdered by parents and step-parents whose monstrous acts defy explanation or understanding. What puzzles me is how, in a community so dedicated to combating child abuse and neglect, these conditions go undetected until it is too late. Obviously, those directly at fault shield them from the outside world. They're too young for school and are not brought to a doctor's attention. However, family and friends have to know what is going on. Too many people, good people, choose not to get involved and turn a blind eye to reality. It is said that all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. What happened to Mackenzie and to her sister Makayla is evil. Those who saw and chose to do nothing are, in my mind, equally responsible for this crime. They must share the blame. Andrew Maison, Hilery Maison. In count one, charged as a felony murder, is the judgment of this court. You be committed to the Michigan Department of Corrections to serve a term of life without parole, given for 288 days served. You must comply with the DNA testing requirements and pay a $60 fee, pay a state minimum cost of $340 each, and the victim's assessment fee of $130. Court costs are set at $300, and if you're able to pay at any point in the future for attorney fees, you are to reimburse those costs. On the remaining charges, counts 2 and 3 of torture and 4 and 5 of child abuse, is the court's determination that it will follow the recommendation of the Michigan Department of Corrections and impose a period of life imprisonment with credit for 288 days served against those offenses which run concurrent with one another. Now, you are.
Now, here is where the story gets very confusing for people. This is Mackenzie. Everybody knows her face. Everybody knows her pictures. She unfortunately passed away in 2015. The trial was 2016. Her biological mother, Shelby Coffey, left Mackenzie and the younger one, Makayla, with her biological father, and he remarries another woman who becomes Hilery Maison, the two that were sentenced for the death and the abuse and neglect charges. In the summer of 2014, Mackenzie and Makayla had a cousin born. His name, Matthew Maison. Matthew Maison, unfortunately, was shy of his 4th birthday when he was found deceased in his home in February of 2018. The grandparents, along with a whole community of people for over 7 years, has been fighting diligently for justice for Matthew Maison. I'd like to hear that a case has been filed. Amy Maison said when she was asked what she would like to hear from the prosecutor's office as she and other protested in memory of her step-grandson Saturday. About 18 people held signs along the Pine Grove Avenue Saturday afternoon shouting justice for Matthew, a 3-year-old boy who died over 6 years ago in what has been ruled a homicide. This was last year, 2024, when everybody in the community in St. Clair County, Port Huron, Fort Gratiot, Marysville all went to this rally to protest for justice for Matthew. Matthew Maison was found dead in his bed in Port Huron Township on February 19th of 2018. An autopsy report obtained by the Times-Herald stated bruises were found on his body and cause of death was ruled a homicide. In the last 7 years since, no charges have been filed, leaving the investigation into his death in limbo. St. Clair County Prosecutor Michael Wendling has said that he has reviewed the result of the investigation into Matthew's death, but determined that the evidence was not strong enough to charge any individual person for his death. He also stated that he would move forward with a criminal case if an investigation were resubmitted and met his standards. It is an assessment that Amy and her husband David Maison disagree with. The couple recently reviewed a St. Clair County Sheriff's Office investigation into Matthew's death and have said that they believe there is enough evidence to take the case to trial. Passerbys honked in support of the protesters. The event had been planned online originally for March of 2024, but was delayed due to the weather. Matthew's relatives have also been petitioning Michigan State Police to start their own investigation into his death, arguing that a fresh review of the investigation could help the case as it progresses. Rita Williams, a friend of the family who has also helped them manage the social media account in support of their call for prosecution, said that their Facebook group has nearly doubled in membership from about 115 members in March to over 220. With engagement much higher than it was before, they have almost 6,000 followers now on the group on Facebook. We're here to remind people that Matthew deserves justice just like anyone, Williams said as she spoke to viewers online via a live stream. Matthew does not deserve to be forgotten. This is the grandparents, Amy and David Maison. This was the protest in 2024. This is the Facebook group if you would like to go over there and support or donate or buy anything. And the day for justice has come. As of 18 hours ago, Maurice Micheal Houle and the mother of Matthew Maison, Mae Maison, have been arrested and charged. Yes, the news does not have this yet. They have not given this out yet. The Associated Press, along with international news agencies, have not been given the details of the name or the perpetrators that have been found and charged. But I am confirming right now it's the parents. It is Mae Maison and Maurice Micheal Houle. They have officially been charged, arrested, and booked. And I will be following the trial if anybody is interested. I am also going to include my prior videos that I have made about this case. But I just want to say, God is so good.
If you live in St. Clair County, Michigan, and you are from Port Huron, Marysville, Kimball, Fort Gratiot, or you're in any of the surrounding towns or counties, you have probably heard of Justice for Matthew. This is a tragic 2018 passing of a very young 3-year-old boy. So more than 6 years ago, this happened. The unexpected and suspicious death of 3-year-old Matthew Maison in his Port Huron bedroom. His grandparents and their supporters are still seeking justice for the boy. And if you are from this area, you definitely know, because you can't go anywhere without seeing a billboard, a sign, a sticker. You see them in everybody's yards. You see them on people's cars, all over the place. But I'm going to dive into this so the rest of the interwebs can see what this case is all about. There have been many peaceful rallies held in Port Huron in the last 6+ years. However, this one is talking about May 4th from 1 to 3 p.m. at Port Huron's Pine Grove Park to raise awareness on the case. Amy and David Maison hope to prompt the St. Clair County authorities to bring closure to this case. As it stands, there have been no arrests made and no charges filed, despite many pleas for resolution over the years, be it to the county prosecutors and judges or to Michigan's governor, Gretchen Whitmer, which I'm sure you guys know her. She's been on The View many times. The family's struggle for justice began on February 19, 2018, when the boy was found unresponsive in bed by babysitters after his mother, Amanda Maison, and her then boyfriend, Maurice Houle. Is that how you say that? If I botched that, I'm sorry. Left for work that morning. Injuries found during the autopsy could not be explained by the mother and boyfriend, even though they were the only adults in the home at the time of the child's death. And several interviews by neighbors and others indicated possible mistreatment and neglect happening to that child for some time before the tragic event. Despite this, the investigation has not moved forward, with it unclear what more law enforcement is looking for in the case, making the case all the more maddening for Amy and David Maison is that a similar case has happened before in the family, with Amanda's brother Andrew and his wife Hilery convicted for the May 2015 death of 5-year-old Mackenzie Maison and the abuse of a 3-year-old Makayla Maison. Everybody in Michigan, all 10.4 million Michiganders, know this story, because when this happened in 2016, these two, they got nailed. Well, him right there, his sister is the mother of this little boy who passed. But these two here neglected their 5 and 3-year-olds so severely that the 5-year-old tragically passed. And everybody had all kinds of signs and stickers and everything for justice for Mackenzie as well. But this is Mackenzie Maison, who passed in 2016. And this case right here is the reason why CPS loves to come into everybody's homes and check everything, because they are scared that they will have another one of these on the watch. Now, we also had a Benadryl OD passing of a very young child under the age of 1, and they love to come in and make sure that parents are not giving melatonin or Benadryl to their children to try to make them go to sleep. Because if you're caught by CPS doing that, you will have your kids taken. At least here you will, because they've had too many cases of it happening. Hilery Maison called 911, initially telling the dispatcher that Mackenzie had not been eating and later reporting that the 5-year-old wasn't breathing. Mackenzie was unresponsive when emergency paramedics arrived. She was taken to an area hospital where medical personnel attempted to resuscitate her for 45 minutes. She was declared deceased at the hospital, but testimony at trial indicated Mackenzie may have been dead hours before the 911 call. But the fact a 5-year-old weighed 25 pounds and a 3-year-old weighed 17 pounds. My twin nieces were literally 19 and 21 pounds when they turned a year old on their birthday, and they were small, very petite, and they're short and petite today. Now, the trial for Mackenzie happened in 2016. However, this actually took place, her unfortunate passing, the year prior in 2015. So Matthew is actually the first cousin to Mackenzie. Can you imagine the grief that these grandparents are going through? Now, there are Reddit pages and people saying some really horrible things, like how they dated Amanda. Amanda is the mother of Matthew Maison. In high school, somebody says, Jesus, you really dodged a bullet there. Actually, my kids dodged a bullet. Like, trying to be funny. That's just, I don't know. When it comes to children passing away from circumstances that they do not have any control over, that's not funny. That's not funny to me. But there are people talking about the grandparents and their Facebook page, which is a great way to support them. If you want to support or buy a hoodie or a yard sign, a sticker, if you just want to simply donate, if you want to get in touch with any of the Michigan's law enforcement, St. Clair County law enforcement, Michigan State Police, our governor, anything to try and get justice for this little boy would be fantastic. But this is where you would go to be able to get case updates about what's really going on. There are people on Reddit who are trying to deter people from doing that. Basically saying horrible things about, well, if there are these kinds of parents to Amanda and her brother to produce not 1 but 2 children who have children that go on to neglect those children to their ultimate fatality, What kind of grandparents could they have been? Irrelevant, because that person doesn't even put a picture of their own face with their own name, and they're not saying it through who they really are, and they're not coming with the receipts. So if they're not coming with actual proof, they're not verifying, they're not corroborating, and they're not showing shit, I don't care if you email yourself something on some other device and you sit there and read it and act like it's some kind of real receipt. No, I mean real receipts. I don't mean somebody emailed you some BS information. I mean some real receipts, some real proof, evidence. And until that happens, that has nothing to do with the fact that a 3-year-old little boy deserves to have legal justice for his untimely passing. And this is precisely why, because no 3-year-old should be passing from any of those things right there. There's only 1-2 people that are legally responsible for making sure none of those things happen to a child, and that would be the people that have the custody and the responsibility, the moral and legal obligation to keep that child alive, healthy, and safe. That'd be mom and dad. So this right here is what I'm referring to. Everything else in the semantics are just BS. And you're going to find it on the internet, because you're going to always find people that want to insert themselves into high-profile cases or even local high-profile cases. That's what people like to do for whatever crazy, bizarre reason. So I would highly suggest anybody that would like to support or would like to buy something or would like to donate or would like to just even be updated on anything that's going on, or for lack of better words, not going on as far as justice for Matthew, I would highly suggest you go to the Facebook, because I just took this. Literally, I just took this today. Look at, there's a sticker right there on the back of that car. Right there. This is from the rally. Pine Grove Park. That even Canada could see it on the other side of the river. The Facebook group, pictures, people's signs. And it's amazing that they keep these posted for everybody, because apparently the mother, Amanda, is very particular over the grandparents even going near that. How narcissistic are you that you caused the unaliving of your own child, and you're going to tell everybody else that they can't even touch the gravesite or the stone and go over there and clean it, because God knows she's not cleaning it. You could go up to Birchwood Mall at Fort Gratiot when they were holding their table, and they always let you know on the Facebook group where you could support. You could buy hoodie, bracelets, cups, stickers, you can get your signs, everything there. You can even just donate. Now, this was international news here. This would technically be Matthew Maison's uncle. That's his mother's brother. And Mackenzie Maison is his first cousin. Something bizarre is going on here. And then we even have the case of Elizabeth Long, plus almost 600 other cases. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Besides semantics and micro and analyzing everything, this is about law enforcement needing to do their job.
People are now behind bars in connection to the death of a 3-year-old boy from Port Huron Township. Matthew Maison was found dead in February of 2018, and there hasn't been many developments in the case since then. Until today, police announced they have a man and a woman in custody. Officials say the arrest follows some, quote, significant recent developments. Right now, they're keeping the names of the suspects and the details about their arrest quiet until charges are officially filed. Of course, we'll keep you posted as we learn more.
I have been covering this true crime case for a very long time. 7 years, 2 grandparents have been fighting for justice for their grandson, Matthew Maison, who was found deceased at only 3 years old in February of 2018. You cannot go anywhere in St. Clair County, Michigan, without seeing the signs or the giant billboard all over the highway. Amy and David Maison are the grandparents of Matthew Maison, but what a lot of people don't know is that in May of 2015, their 5-year-old granddaughter, Mackenzie Maison, was found deceased. And that case, if you haven't heard and you haven't been following it, their son, the father of Mackenzie, and her 3-year-old sister, Makayla, who survived, Andrew Maison and his wife, Hilery Maison, they are serving life. Not only that, but the Michigan Supreme Court will not review the case of a Port Huron couple who was convicted of unaliving and torturing their 5-year-old daughter, and the same with their 3-year-old daughter, Makayla, who survived. They actually had the audacity to put in an application to the Michigan Supreme Court for a reconsideration. And of course, it was considered and it was denied. The Michigan Court of Appeals ruled that Hilery and Andrew Maison have no grounds to appeal their convictions. Essentially, both girls were deprived of food, water, and medical attention and suffered from severe malnutrition and dehydration, which the 5-year-old's case also led to severe pneumonia and which caused her death. A portion of the appeals court ruling reads: the Maisons were sentenced to life in prison without parole in March of 2016. Rescue crews responded to their Oak Street home May 26 of 2015. Hilery Maison had called 911 saying that her 5-year-old stepdaughter, Mackenzie, hadn't been eating, then later said that she wasn't breathing. Medical personnel attempted to resuscitate the girl for over 45 minutes before she was declared deceased at a hospital, Port Huron Hospital. Testimony declared the Maison's trial indicated that she may have been deceased for hours before the 911 call had ever even been made. In the appeal, the Maisons both argued that there was insufficient evidence that they caused Mackenzie's death. The appeals court disagreed, noting testimony of Mackenzie's severe malnutrition and lack of needed medical attention, even if the defendants had not intended to take Mackenzie's life. When they failed to provide her with sufficient food, water, and appropriate medical attention, the extreme extent of her malnourished and injuries established that the lack of basic necessities was neither accidental nor done without malice. This is what is so infuriating about Casey Anthony's case. Yeah, they could not find absolute definitive proof that she was guilty of premeditation. They couldn't prove that she actually intended to do it. Therefore, it would have been a second-degree charge, a second-degree negligent homicide, which resulted in the death of a child charge. The jury has spoken about that. In a situation like this, when you neglect to give a child what they need to sustain life, to survive, that is neglect. You are just as guilty if you caused it intentionally. But I have bombshell insider information because yesterday, finally, the same grandparents of Mackenzie who passed away, their daughter is the mother of Matthew Maison, who at 3 years old passed away from the same exact thing. And it's been 7 years and they're not releasing the names, but guess what? They finally got her. They finally got Amanda Mae Maison, the mother. And if you would love to support the grandparents, you can go to Justice for Matthew Maison on Facebook. Join the group. Or if you want to support, they usually are up at Birchwood Mall. They have a table where you could buy merchandise, you could buy yard signs, you could buy hoodies, t-shirts, stickers, all kinds of things, or you can just make a donation. But this is my bombshell right here. The news haven't released it yet, but Amanda Maison has been booked. She has officially been booked and officially charged with the death of her 3-year-old son, Matthew Maison. Praise Jesus. They are currently charging her with homicide, murder, first-degree felony for the death of her 3-year-old son, Matthew Maison, who passed away in February of 2018 and was the cousin of Mackenzie and Makayla Maison. Mackenzie, the one that passed. This person right here is the sister of that man right there. Mackenzie and Makayla's biological father. What these grandparents have endured and suffered is beyond me. I could not even imagine losing one grandchild, almost losing her sister, and then not even 3 years later, losing another one from the same kind of neglect. So the Associated Press and all the news agencies here and around Detroit, Michigan, are not posting anything detailing who was arrested, their names, anything like that. But I'm telling you now, you're hearing it here first. It is Amanda Mae Maison. After 7 long years, she is finally arrested and she's finally being charged. Those grandparents and their relentlessness, the billboards, the yard signs, all of it has finally made law enforcement take it seriously that this is not natural. After the first case of Mackenzie and Makayla, it says here, seeing justice served for one set of their grandchildren, the Maisons were determined to see right done by their grandson, with the couple reportedly reaching out to Child Protective Services and other authorities in the months leading up to the February tragedy, and they failed to do anything. I really hope that Amy and David Maison, if you see this, which you probably will, I really hope that you consider a civil suit and you sue DHS and CPS, because their failure to do anything led to this. And if they would have intervened and done the right thing and paid attention, this wouldn't have happened. A very similar thing has happened in my family, except for it has to do with SA and not the unaliving. But I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old great nieces who were SA'd intentionally by their own father. And I had reported them not only in the state of Missouri, who failed to do anything. The Missouri State Police failed to do anything. All he did was jump state lines from Missouri to Michigan and just reoffended again and again and again. And he was already a registered sex offender. So he wasn't supposed to be around children at all, let alone was he supposed to be continuously with this girl making another child, that girl making another child, just so he can continuously reoffend. But how many times I've contacted CPS myself, I think that it's time they start being held accountable when they fail to actually investigate and take the proper steps to protect children and something happens to them, like them being SA'd for continuous another year or an unfortunate passing. They're like, this should never happen, especially when people have contacted time and time again. And the grandparents have done just that. But if you see this and when you see this, I really hope that you consider getting yourself, if you need Blue Water legal aid, or if you need any other legal advocate, or if you need any legal advice or free legal advice, if you need anybody to look at the case, you have a really tremendous case for a civil suit against them. And I hope that you really consider it, because somebody needs to hold these CPS workers that don't do their job accountable. But it says right here that the Maisons only report frustration by the lack of action authorities in the name of their grandson, Matthew. In addition to all of the rallies that they have held, the Maisons and the supporters gather via the public Facebook group titled Justice for Matthew. Please consider, if you're on Facebook, go over there. You don't have to donate, but if you would like to, you could buy merchandise, you could buy yard signs, you can just donate directly to them. And please pray for them, because they definitely need it and the solace in this time. If you liked my video, please subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and share.